Imagine trying to explain something simple, not facts, but feelings. The smell of rain on a summer afternoon, the feeling of your childhood home, the way grief sits quietly in the chest. We struggle to explain these things with words, not because we don't understand them, but because words are not how the mind truly thinks. Your brain does not naturally think in sentences. It thinks in images, concepts, memories, emotions. Words are simply the translation layer we use to convert those experiences into something another person can understand. But what if words were never meant to be the primary way humans communicated? What if they were a replacement? And what if that replacement came from one of the oldest stories ever told? Thousands of years ago, a strange story appeared in the book of Genesis, the story of the Tower of Babel. According to the story, all humans once shared one language. With this shared language, humanity became unified, coordinated, powerful. They began building a tower that symbolized human unity and ambition. But there's another detail in the ancient narrative that people often forget. The people of that time were said to live extraordinarily long lives. Some accounts describe lifespans approaching hundreds, even close to 1,000 years. Now imagine what that would mean for the development of the human mind. Today, most people live less than a century. A lifetime passes quickly, but imagine a mind that continues learning, adapting, and experiencing the world for hundreds of years. The brain is one of the most adaptable systems in existence. Over a long enough period of experience, it rewires itself, strengthens pathways, develops deeper forms of perception. So what if, over extremely long lifetimes, the human mind and body naturally began developing more direct forms of communication? Not just spoken language, but deeper forms of shared understanding, communication that moved closer and closer to concept itself, mind to mind, experience to experience. A type of communication where the boundary between thought and expression begins to disappear. And yet the same story that describes humanity sharing one language also tells us something else happened. Something sudden. Humanity's communication was confused. People could no longer understand each other. And at roughly the same point in the narrative, human lifespans also dramatically changed. Instead of hundreds of years, human life eventually settled closer to a little over 100 years, as if something fundamental about human development had shifted, which raises a strange question. What exactly was lost? Think about how inefficient words actually are. When you describe a memory, you compress an entire experience into a few sentences, but the real experience contains images, sounds, smells, emotions, relationships, meaning. Words strip most of that away. They are like sending a photograph through a fax machine. The meaning survives, but the richness is lost. In other words, spoken language may actually be a low-bandwidth version of thought, a slower system, a simplified interface between human minds. But something fascinating is happening right now in technology. Artificial intelligence is beginning to move past language entirely. Researchers are experimenting with systems that can interpret brain signals directly. Companies like Neuralink and research programs such as DARPA are studying ways to translate neural activity into text, images, and commands. Some experiments have already reconstructed rough images people were imagining by analyzing brain activity, not words, thoughts, concepts, signals from the mind itself. Right now, the technology is primitive, but the direction is unmistakable. Humanity is slowly learning how to decode thought, and once we can decode thought, the next step becomes obvious. Transmit it. Imagine a world where instead of saying, "I understand you," you experience what someone else feels instantly. Instead of describing a memory, you simply share it. Instead of explaining an idea with hundreds of words, you send the concept directly. Perfect communication, no misunderstanding, no translation, no language barriers, just mind-to-mind connection. It would unite humanity faster than any invention in history. Cultures could merge, knowledge could spread instantly. The world might begin to function like one giant nervous system, which raises a strange and unsettling possibility. What if humanity is slowly rebuilding the very thing that was once broken? Not a tower made of stone, but a tower made of minds. A global network where thought flows instantly between people. And if that happens, the ancient story begins to sound less like mythology and more like a warning. The question is, if that unity returns through artificial intelligence, will it lead humanity to something greater? Or will we finally discover why it was broken in the first place?